Hello and welcome to another edition of Kayak Fishing Weekly. We're the show on the Serious Angler Network that's dedicated to all things kayak fishing. We've got a fun one planned today, but before we get into our topic, a lot of drama in the fishing world this week. Don't want to get so much into the drama, but I thought Christine Fisher had a great post today. I saw an Instagram post where she mentioned, yeah, there's been some negativity, drama, whatever you want to call it, on the pro bass scene over the last couple of days. But I had a blast, and this I think was Christine's point too. Bill Lowen absolutely smashed them down there on the Harris chain. I'm not Harris chain, St. John's. Smashed them, won the tournament. Super tight finish. It was a lot of fun to watch that. I don't think anybody knew going in who was going to win that. Just a few ounces separating first and third. Really, really great finish. Fun. I always love watching the tournament coverage in Florida. But yeah, I want to focus on that positivity, that energy of those guys fishing down in Florida, flipping, punching, sight fishing, doing the stuff that I love to do. And then yeah, it was cool kind of to see some of the veteran guys, like Gerald Swindler in particular, using a live scope, throwing a jerk bait, catching fish, taking advantage of the technology. It's cool to see fish being caught a bunch of different ways, and I'm looking forward to watching some of the coverage of the Elite Series down on Okeechobee over the next few days. And honestly, I tuned in. I've not watched as much Bass Pro Tour coverage over the last few years. I haven't watched as much of their live, but I tuned into the season opener on the Harris chain, and it was fun. I really enjoyed watching those guys. Same style fishing as what the elites were doing in the St. John's. A lot of flipping reeds, just power fishing, braided line. Watching Fletcher Shryock punch mats was cool. Really enjoyed. And then like Mark Davis, hopefully I'm not nerding out too much, but Mark Davis caught like 6 or 7 fish, like consecutive casts off the same reed clump. I've never seen that happen before. I've never done anything close to that before. I never would even thought to make multiple casts like that to the exact same little clump. I would have assumed, okay, that was a bedding fish, maybe pitch back in there. Once you catch the second fish, I don't think I would have put a third cast in that clump, and he catches a limit off of like literally one clump of reeds. But yeah, I had a blast watching all the coverage for Florida. I'm excited to watch some more. But keeping with that Florida theme, the Kayak Adventure Series was down in Florida over the last few days, and I want to shout out the top finishers there. It was some very impressive numbers. I was bummed to not be able to go, but I'll shout out. We'll start with third place here. Seth Taylor, 97 and a quarter inches for 5 fish. Impressive. Runner up, 97 and a half inches. Christopher Bailey. And then the winner with an impressive 107 inches, 5 bass for 107 inches. Congratulations to Daryl Harrelson. Absolutely blasted him. His small fish was an 18 and a quarter. His next smallest fish was 19 and a half. He had a 22, a 22 and a half, and then his big fish was 24 and 3/4. And believe it or not, the 24 and 3/4 was not big fish for the tournament. So just, slugfest, especially for Daryl. But congrats to him. Congrats to the top finishers down there. Looked like it was a lot of fun. I am excited to fish the Kayak Adventure Series. Let's see, we're about to hit March, so I've got a couple of months still. But first week of May, I cannot wait to fish that tournament. I forget what they're calling it, but it's going to be based out of South Boston. Some North Carolina waters in play, some Virginia waters in play. I'm excited to fish my first Kayak Adventure Series tournament, and I guess about 60 days now. Let's see. Anything else? News and notes. Well, we've got upcoming on the Bassmaster scene. We've got the Kayak Series Championship. It's still a few weeks away, but I'm starting to get excited for that. I hate to be missing it. Not fishing it myself this year, but I'm excited to see what happens down there. Lake Fork's an awesome fishery. I think there'll be a lot of different ways you can catch them. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of fish shallow, maybe some sight fishing going on. but I'm looking forward to that as well. Got a few weeks to wait yet, and then Bassmaster Classic. So it's weather's still cold here. I know some of the little ponds I tried to fish this past weekend, and the little ponds were frozen over. I know it's a lot of you out there are experiencing the same weather, but I'm looking forward to warmer weather over the next few weeks, and the fishing I think is going to get good here. So um, excited for spring, chance to catch some big bass, and I guess that's a good segue. Time to start talking bass fishing. Let's get to our guest. All right, so I am joined by Alex Sanville of Alex Sanville Fishing. There he is, Alex. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
And dude, for anybody that is not following your Instagram, they need to. Like pause the video, go subscribe. Subscribe's not the right word. I'm getting my
Follow.
social media follow. There we go. I'm old and tired. But dude, thanks for joining me. I wanted to talk a little bit about paddle boards tonight because it's something that the first time I got on one was I think this past May, and I just got to do it for a few hours, but I enjoyed it. It was a little similar but different to kayak fishing. I know you do a fair bit of it. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, but before we get into that, I always like to hear how people got into fishing, kind of their origin story. So I'm curious to hear yours.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, my dad introduced me to fishing when I was 5 years old. And, the first couple times that I went, it wasn't anything super like memorable, I'd say. Like, I don't really have any crazy remembrance of the first time that actually went fishing. But I can tell you the first time that I like was for sure hooked was I went with my dad and my buddy and his father. And we were just throwing Senkos down the bank at my, home lake, Jamesville Reservoir, and I caught like a 4.5 pounder on a Senko on a little Shakespeare, like 4 foot ultralight. And that just, got me hung in a tree and everything, and somehow got out when I caught it. And, that's how I got hooked. But, my dad introduced me to it. And, ever since that day when I caught that 4 pounder, it was really fun from then on. And I was just super amazed with the fish and, catching them.
Dude, how old were you when you caught that fish?
8 years old, I think.
Dude,
Yeah, I think
that's awesome. I don't remember how it took me probably till I was like 15 or 16. Like I'd been doing it for a number of years before I got anything close to that.
eight.
That's awesome to catch one when you're just getting started.
I know, right?
God, I still remember my first one. I still remember one fish where I still give mom a hard time. Where I just learned, I'm a little push button Zebco. It was probably a 5.5, 6 footer. And just walking the back of a pond, I'd learned a Texas rig from a book at the library. It's like, all right, I got it rigged all by myself. I was all proud of myself. I'm pitching that thing around and catch one that I said it was five. It wasn't five. There's no way. It was probably like 2.5, 3. But just the way that thing fought compared to the bluegill that we used to catch with a cane pole out of the pond,
Hmm.
it was totally different. So basically, I get the fish. My little brother, I think, helps me net it, and we go over, and mom uses the old school. I was young enough that we still had the film, so she goes, takes the picture, and we get home and realize there's no film in the camera. So I that it if you don't have, what is it? If you don't have video, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, at least you got the memory.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what counts.
I'll never forget that fish. But I guess let's jump into the paddle boarding because
Hmm.
I know you fish a bunch of different ways. I've seen you do some bank fishing stuff that maybe we'll talk a little bit later. But the paddle boarding, you've been doing that a while?
Not that long, honestly. I'd say probably a year and a half to 2 years. Um, I fished off of like a sit-in kayak and a canoe and all that before the paddleboard, but it was just
Okay.
something that my buddy showed me. He was like, just a video online of, oh, this is cool. You can inflate this and walk in the woods and fish a pond or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. So, I had to get one. But yeah, I haven't been doing it for super long, but it's definitely a fun way to fish.
Yeah, dude, you've been doing it long enough. I'm gonna see. I'm old and bad with technology, but I'm gonna see if I can pull in the screen here. That shoot, I can't even see the date. my old eyes. But that for anybody who's listening, it's a picture of Alex. It looks like is that a big spot?
Yeah. Yep.
Freaking tank spot. But that's one of your kayaks. Let me see if I can actually scroll through to the other, or I said kayak, paddleboard.
Paddleboard. Yeah.
This is what is intriguing to me because I've seen paddleboards. The one that I was on was a pretty simple one.
Hmm.
This one has a pedal drive that
Yeah.
looks like, the same kind of thing you'd see in a native or I don't know, a old town. That's a prop style drive underneath there?
Yep. Yep. That's just a prop style drive. Um, that's something that the paddleboard game definitely needed, because if any of y'all have been on a paddleboard, the second you get any sort of wind, you're getting pushed pretty easily in comparison to like a kayak. In a kayak, you're still getting pushed, but not nearly as bad. So, a paddleboard kind of, in order for you to fish effectively, I feel like you kind of need that pedal drive, but you can still catch fish without it. But I think it's something that the paddleboard scene definitely needed.
Yeah, to me that's amazing because,
Hmm.
like you said, that was the day that or day and a half that I was out. I was able to get, it was kind of overcast, basically no wind. I was able to get in a little pocket and kind of maneuver around. I can't imagine some of the stuff that I go out in my Outback or the other kayaks. I would not dare take the paddleboard out in that.
Yeah.
Um, and it just, and I feel like the pedals just for any type of watercraft, it opens up a lot more.
Yeah.
I don't fatigue nearly as much with that. But to see, I did not even realize there was a manufacturer. I knew Hobie's got the what do they call it? They've got their links, and then
Mhm.
they have another. And I can't remember what it's called. iTrek maybe, but
I
it's a
think that I
it's
think that that might be it.
but it's a different. I mean, it's a different pedal drive, and it's just a different design. I didn't realize there was anything else out there on the market. So, what's the name of the one that you have or that
Yep.
manufacturer?
Yep. That's the company that I work with. I've been working with them for a couple of years now. That's a Glide SUP.
Glide SUP.
Hmm.
What's the price point on those? With I guess I'm assuming they have other options without the pedal drive
Hmm.
also.
Yep. I believe so that's the Mako. That's the only one that they make that is like compatible with the pedal drive. But that one I
Okay.
believe is $799. So
799.
yeah. Hmm.
Oh my god. Like that for comparison, I don't remember the exact price of the iTrek, but I would say it's between I'm guessing it's 3,000. So you're talking like price point. Like to me, that's awesome.
Yeah, and
That's
that's without the drive. So
okay.
with the drive, I think the drive is another 600, 700 maybe. It's still less, but
Yeah.
you know,
So we're still talking like $1,500 for something, and I was scrolling through, I don't have it up. Like, there were some other photos of you, standing up, like the same way that I was staying in my Hobie or any of the bigger kayaks. Um, that was one of my questions was stability, and I saw the picture, I was like, "Oh, dude, it's the one that I was on, whatever it was last spring." Um, maybe somebody smaller than me would have been okay, but I started to stand on it, and I've spent a lot of time standing in kayaks. I can stand in a 10-foot Crescent ultralight, but the one that I was trying to stand on, it was not happening.
yeah,
I
yeah.
sat kind of like the homeless fisherman guy, had the feet draped off to the side and just
Hmm.
paddling that wind fishing. But to be able to stand, man, when the wind's not blowing, it's nice.
Yeah. The Mako that I have, it's 12 and a half feet and 36 inches wide. So it's a nice platform. And the thing about the paddle boards is that, there's no hull. So there's none of that, rocking. So they are pretty stable. You're never gonna flip it. If anything, you're just gonna fall off the side of it. Um, but SUP stands for stand up paddleboard. So they are pretty stable. Especially the Mako.
Dude, that's awesome.
Hmm.
One of the other, so we talked stability, we talked price. You mentioned access or portability.
Hmm.
Um, that's another big advantage I could see for somebody that's, maybe you don't have an SUV or a trailer, a way to haul a standard kayak.
Hmm.
I could see these inflatables. Like, are you able to deflate that and inflate that fairly quickly?
Yeah, I mean, on the spot, I'd say it depends on if you have an electric pump or a hand pump. But as far as like getting it set up and stuff, but as far as rolling it up, I mean, it's very quick, and it rolls up into a bag that's the size of your average suitcase. So you could fly with it out of the country. You could go on a cruise with it. So that, I mean, that's the main thing that I like about the Mako is it's 12 and a half feet, 36 inches wide with a drive, and you can literally take that on a plane. You know what I'm saying?
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. What not to put you on the spot, but do you know offhand what the weight is
Of
for
the
that
actual
total
board,
package? Mhm.
I think without the drive, I mean it's less than 40 pounds without the drive.
Dude.
And then the drive is probably another 20 pounds.
So you can throw that thing in a bag, or does it come with a backpack?
Yeah, it comes with a really, really nice luggage style, really hardy zipper bag.
So you can hike into some place with your,
Hmm.
with that on your back, a couple rods, a tackle bag, and get
Yes.
into some sneaky spots.
Hmm. And what's cool
Dude.
about the Mako now, I partnered with a company called Pack Motor, and it's like a motor powered with a lithium battery that has two dual thrusters. So now I don't even use the drive. Like I just have that huge deck space and then I have the pack motor and it's, remote controlled. So now, I mean, that thing is a crazy, crazy vessel that you can literally, like you just said, walk through the woods and go somewhere, inflate it, and fish.
Dude, I could imagine so many places. Like even here in Virginia, there's some really remote places, like water supply reservoirs, places that you got to drive, and then it's a steep trail to get to.
Yep.
And I've wanted to fish those places with something stable, but the only thing I've been able to get into them so far, like me there by myself, is my little 10 foot, 45, 47, whatever it is, pound ultralight,
Hmm.
and it just I can stand in it, but it is I don't know the exact dimensions of it, but it is not that wide, and
Yep.
I'm probably pushing, especially if I throw a little black plaque and some tackle in there, I'm pushing the weight capacity. So it's, trying to stand up. I've tried to throw swim baits with that setup, and it's just, and I've stood try to stand in current in some remote streams that I'll take it to, and it just it's not the same as a 12-foot kayak, or a
Yeah.
12-foot paddleboard.
Hmm.
Um, the width and the length really does make a difference. I would I'm envisioning getting to these places and actually getting to cover the whole thing. Like, it opens up a whole different world.
Hmm.
And the price point, I know we talked about that already, but that is really attractive. I mean, that's something that, you know, I can't afford a bass boat. I'll just come out and say it. I don't know that
Hmm.
I'll ever be in a position to buy a bass boat. And that's one of the things that appeals to me about, kayaks, paddle boards. Um, it's something that the average person can get into. You don't have to have a giant bank account.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, I feel like that's something that I could have, I could get a summer job and actually save up enough money to go and get that if they were around, 20 plus years ago.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, and you can really the paddle boards are sick because you can rig them in some cool ways. Like, I mean, talking about saving money, you could get a board significantly cheaper than the Mako that I have that we've been talking about, and get a little hand tiller trolling motor, and connect that to a milk crate in the back of your paddleboard, and have a motor on the paddleboard. So it is really cool. I mean, there's more ways than that as well, but it's cool. You don't have to spend that much money to get in the to get on the water nowadays.
That's awesome. And
Hmm.
I'm curious, the motor that you mentioned with it's like the, I guess, dual props on it.
Yeah. Hmm.
How does that attach?
So
Um,
basically, the part that's on your board, there's like a centerpiece that you connect the wire into that connects to the battery, and then there's two arms that come off of that centerpiece like this, and on the end of those two arms you have these circular thrusters or props, and then that attaches to a strap that goes under. So, that portion goes on top, this goes under, and it tightens down. And you can connect it to a canoe, a paddleboard, a kayak, anything that, is slim enough for it to go on top of and strap onto.
Gotcha. That
Hmm.
is a cool idea.
Yeah.
I've not heard of, like, I know about the Bigsby and some of these other little drop through. There's another one that I've seen that can attach to a rudder,
Hmm.
but I haven't seen one that you can actually strap on like that. That's a cool concept. And
Yeah.
what's the name of that motor again?
It's called the pack motor. And it's cool because the remote is a joystick. So you can literally, turn 360 on the spot. So
Dude.
it lasts all day. Like the last time I fished with it, I think I was out there for like 7 hours, and I got back to the ramp and my battery was still at 30%. So it's definitely legit.
All right. So you said you've graduated to that
Hmm.
primarily over the drive, but
Yep.
I am curious about the drive too. Do you have any idea what speeds you can reach on a paddleboard?
With the drive,
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
like drive versus motor.
if you're really pushing it, you could get to 4.5, maybe 5 miles an hour with the drive if you're really pushing it.
Gotcha.
But like an average speed, 3 miles an hour. So it's a good prop drive, especially for the price. Like I didn't really have a problem with it. It's just me personally, the lakes that I fish, Lake Norman, for example, spotted bass, it just got so tiring to make the runs that I wanted to make, and then chase schooling fish. Like I needed a motor, so I would have had the same problem with a kayak too. And on those big open herring lakes, you kind of need some sort of propulsion.
Yeah. No, I completely
Yeah.
agree.
Mhm.
I was very hard-headed. I think I kayaked for probably 10 years before I finally got something with a pedal drive on it, and I was kicking myself instantly because it opens up, like, the fatigue, and I was kinda mentioning it earlier, but maybe if you're, Drew Gregory or, Eric Jackson, m everybody but those guys, you're gonna be able to pedal faster than you can paddle,
Mhm.
and a whole lot longer, and then the motor just, like, takes it to another level.
Yeah.
I've had days where I've got the motor hooked up and I just leave the drive laying in the front of the kayak. I don't even set it in. They've got them now to where, the foot steering kits and,
Mhm.
if you get it smooth enough or you get good enough with it, you just kind of, slow and find that right speed. Like if I can get around, I want to say it's like 5 or 6% on the Newport that I've got. It's fast enough that I can cover water, but I can still maneuver. I'm not going too fast. It to me, it's like the next level, and I think
Yeah.
that's where, I mean, you go to these tournaments anymore, and it's like everybody's graduated to that. It was taboo for a long time, but it is so much. It just you can go so much further.
Yeah, I just feel like the kayak scene in general is just taking leaps and bounds and getting closer and closer to being actual bass boats. But I still think that's cool to see though. Like I see a lot of people that don't like that, but I think that's pretty cool to see like the innovation and like how these companies are, managing to maintain.
Yeah, it's really cool because I feel like there's guys that like to do it, with just a paddle, and
Hmm.
that's cool if that's what you want to do. Um, but you can graduate. You've got sort of different levels, different things you can add on, different ways to fish, and it's kind of like I was talking about Drew Gregory's kayak adventure series. They just had a tournament down in Florida.
Hmm.
The guy that won had 107 inches, just murdered him. I've never broken 100 in a five fish tournament. This dude had 107, and it's one of the cool things about Drew's tournaments. Like he puts these rivers in play where you can, it's great for a paddle. You can float the river with a paddle. You don't have to have anything fancy. You don't need electronics. But then you can also get out there on some of the lakes that he puts, inbounds for the tournament and live scope with them. Put all the gadgets on it. Save an expensive outboard motor and gasoline. and it just it it kind of depends on what you want to do. You can make it as complicated or simple as you want, and I think it's good for the sport, like you said.
Yeah, for sure.
One other, so we talked stability, price, portability. We talked a little bit about speed. The last item that I was kind of curious about is durability. I know some different models. They've used different levels of, I don't even know what the right word is. Like I've seen some that are really, really thick and durable. The guys like at Innovative Sportsman have an Osprey, I think it's called. It's
Yes.
an inflatable that they're running over rocks uh, and I've seen other ones that are less stable. But yours, how does yours compare? Do you ever have to worry about kind of the stuff that you're around?
No. So I don't. I'm gonna be completely honest. The only paddleboard that I've ever had other than a Glide is an Ascend, which is a Bass Pro Shop brand, and that one I still never felt worried. But I feel like over time, if you are river fishing and running it over sharp rocks, over time you might have issues with that one. But with all of the glides I've had, I seriously, I mean, I can't really see where you would have an issue. Um, unless like I'm saying over time. So like let's say 5 years into scraping it, then maybe you'd have an issue. But as far as like the durability of those things, first 5 years, I mean, I'm talking I've with a glide bait, I've set it and the bait comes flying back, smokes the paddleboard. I've done that a bunch of times and I've never even once like had an issue. It just bounces right off it. And
No punctures.
my dad was, he asked me the same question before I got the Mako, and when I inflated it and he felt it, he was like, "Oh wow, that literally feels like a kayak." So once you get like a nicer one and it's fully inflated to like let's say 15 plus psi, there's really nothing you have to worry about as far as durability.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Honestly, 5 years, you could do a lot of damage on a standard kayak, banging it up in the rivers in 5 years.
Hmm.
It, nothing's going to be, uh, well, I don't even know what the right word is. Like everything breaks down, everything's going to scrape up.
Hmm.
But I've, with those big fish, because you got, and I won't pull the Instagram back up and put you on the spot, but you've got I've seen giant smallmouth on there, giant spotted bass, some saltwater fish, big largemouth. Those one of the durability issues that I've heard from some of the other models is the I guess a complaint is that they did not use the same thickness of the material on the top. And I've heard of guys having big fish flop around and a fin poke a hole.
Yeah, no, I could never see that happening on any of the glide boards or even a lot of the nicer companies like Boat, Aqua Glide, NRS. Like I don't think any of these nicer companies that's gonna happen necessarily.
Gotcha.
Maybe like a giant saltwater fish. I can't speak for that. I've never experienced that. But for any freshwater fish, like I can't really see that being an issue, to be honest with you. But the way that I fish off of the boards, I usually net the fish and I have them over to the side and I never really bring them in unless it's for the picture or putting them on the catch board. I don't really let them like flop around and stuff. But like I said, just from like the hooks flying in and like me throwing the board around, I really can't see that being an issue, at least for the Mako.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
That's that's really awesome. That price
Yeah,
point, I'm blown away. I'm gonna have to do some more research, check out the website because I'm intrigued. I can see some big advantages to something like that.
yeah. I need to make a video on my social media just highlighting that board just so people can see.
And then the Mako, I think I saw a different one. It reminded me of the boats that we've got in the shop. The because you said it was two different models, right? The Mako, that's the one that's compatible with the drive,
Hmm.
but then there was another one that I saw some photos of you in with
Yeah,
no drive, and it had like a different type of like teak colored top on it. Is it
yeah.
that's a different model then?
Yeah, that one's the O2 Angler. And that's just a standard, stand-up fishing paddleboard with Scotty mounts and, some other attachment points. And that one is just good for, that one's a really good vessel for like fishing shallow water. Um, I didn't like it as much. I caught big fish off of it, just because I tried really hard and I grinded, but it's not the ideal setup for open water fishing. It's definitely a good one for, shallow water, rivers slash creeks, flat fishing. If you're fly fishing, maybe on the flats and saltwater, that's the perfect, paddleboard just because it is really wide and has a nice open platform for you with no drive slot or anything. Um, but it's just not the best in open water just because you can't really maneuver as well, with
Gotcha.
the paddle.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
Now, I want to shift a little bit because I enjoy talking the paddleboard sort of versus kayak debate. But
Hmm.
I saw some stuff on your channel that well, one big base, and that's kind of how we met. What was it? Raleigh Expo,
Hmm.
Fishing Expo. I was over in the cashing booth. You were at Mike Buca's booth, and yeah, we were chatting for a little bit, and then I followed you on Instagram, realized how big you were, and watched all these glide bait videos. Like you've got a ton of them, and there was one I don't remember what the post date was, but there was one video that I think I just shot this past week where you've got it looks like a spotted bass chasing, it hits the glide, comes off. You could see the other ones chasing, like
Hmm.
following behind the hooked one. And then you could literally watch, like you do a figure eight, like for what I've seen musky guys do. And
Hmm.
you've got this giant spot like right on it. It's to me, that's some of the most compelling footage for anybody that's fishing out of a kayak or a paddleboard or anything like that. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah, thank you, dude. Um, the big baits are just something that I really, really love to do just because I've spent so much time doing it. And, when I first started doing it, I caught so many big fish and had so many big ones follow. It was just something that I immediately fell in love with. So, once I moved down south, it was kind of an advantage for me because I saw that if you present it the right way, things like that will happen. That's just something that I love to do, man, and it's so fun. And that specific scenario was just a perfect situation because that was a wind-blown bank on a nice sunny day in the back of a creek, and the key with that was I casted my bait, to the deep side of the dock and reeled it shallow on the corner, and that's really when they commit hard. On lakes where they don't see the glide a lot, you can just cast it anywhere around the dock and they'll come out and eat it. But on Norman, for example, there's a lot of guys throwing the glide now. So when you present it like that, it's hard for them to pass it up. And that was just one instance where I got it on camera.
Dude, so deep to shallow was the key.
Yes, I mean that's been the key for a lot of the fish that I've caught on the glide is bringing it from the deep water to the shallow water. Especially on those lakes that don't have a lot of houses around them. A lot of guys are casting to the bank, reeling it out in the deep water. So if you position on a really nice point, position your kayak or paddleboard right on the point, cast deep, come shallow. It definitely is something that gives you more followers and a lot more bites for sure. Like I remember I went on Lake Kiwi in South Carolina for the very first time last summer, and it was a tough bite. I was fishing the glide all day, and I was like, you know what? Let me just see if I can, catch these fish by reposition because I went point after point after point, fishing, casting shallow, reeling it deep. And, the second I ran those same points back on that milk run, going deep to shallow, I caught some big ones and pulled some big ones.
Dude, that's cool. And
Hmm.
Kiwi, is that the one right above Hartwell?
Yep.
Okay. I have not fished that one yet.
Hmm.
It's a little bit of a drive for me, but I want to explore some of those North Carolina lakes a little more. I'm in Virginia, but I've been down to Hartwell. I've been to Richard Russell, like the one below Hartwell. Not Kiwi yet, but I'm
Hmm.
gonna have to try it. And I'm intrigued. You mentioned Norman. I remember years ago reading in Bassmaster about that being a numbers lake, and I think that's still true. At least that's I know it's got the spots in it now,
Mhm.
but I mean, is that a fair statement that it's lots of fish, lots of numbers, but not as much quality?
I mean, for me personally, I definitely would say I'm catching a lot of quality, but that's just because I'm using big baits, and it truly is an advantage, just because even if you don't know how to use certain conventional baits or present them, you pulling a big fish from a dock or from a point just shows you so much that, I'll go on a milk run, I'll catch some fish on the glide, I'll pull some fish on the glide, I'll circle back on the fish that I didn't catch with a different bait, and it usually pans out. And when I first moved here, I dabbled with the big bait just because it was a new area and I didn't know how good it was going to be for real. So I fished the jig a lot, a drop shot, Kitech, all that. And when I did that, it was definitely a numbers lake for sure. But the second you switch to a bigger bait, the lake changes for sure, and you catch some big ones.
Yeah,
But the
that's what
thing
I was.
about Norman is it's different. Like a 4 pounder is a big fish. You know what I'm saying? So it's relative. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
mhm.
I know exactly what you're saying. That's kind of what I was curious because I've always thought of it as not a place. I mean, I know the guys would, you'd try to catch a 5 pound kicker largemouth. I'd be following Brian Thrift and him
Yep.
fishing down there, and um, 5 pounder's a big fish, but you're catching giant spotted bass and largemouth on that lake with those bigger baits. So it's kind of eye opening for me when I heard that it was Norman where you're catching those fish.
Yeah, I caught 2 largemouth over 7 on Norman so far.
Dude,
Yeah.
dude. Any idea what the length on those is, like inch wise?
Yeah, the bigger I caught one that was I think like 22, 23 inches, but I caught one that was 24 and a half, and
Dude.
that fish was huge. I mean, when that fish came up for the first time, I was like, dude, that's a really big one for Norman. I mean, it still is, but when I caught it, it should have been weighed more than 7, 24 and a half or 23 and a half. That's a big fish.
Yeah. Virginia's kind of like that. I've caught some in the 24-inch range that you look at the head on it, and I thought double digit. Like if the fish had come off, I would have sworn double
Yeah.
digit. And then I put it on the scale, and I'm like, huh, like it's still a giant fish, but
Hmm.
it's weird if at least around here, I feel like if you catch them in that February, March time frame, they'll have a little more weight on them. But
Yeah.
I've caught 24-inch fish that weighed 7 pounds in Virginia, and I've caught 23, 22 and a half. What was that fish? I think it was 23 and change that
Hmm.
was 10 and a half. So
Yeah.
it's like it doesn't make sense. The girth on those things, you know, it, inches is only like part of the equation for weight.
A 23 10 and a half is a blimp, man. That's a giant.
It was a freak fish. I hope I get to catch another fish like that at some point in my life, but it that's the one I've caught that was a double digit. I've got a few nines, but I'm a lot older than you. I'm 40, and
Hmm.
I've been doing it for a long time. So to
Yeah.
see the size of fish that you're catching, I would not be surprised if you've got more fish over 7 pounds than I do by a big number.
Yeah, back to the Norman thing. It's funny. The the most recent largemouth that I posted is by far the fattest largemouth I ever caught in that lake. Usually they're skinny like we were just talking about. But yeah.
Dude, that's cool. Um, I want to get a favorite bait or maybe a couple of baits. Um, do you have a favorite brand or a favorite size?
Glide bait?
Mhm.
Yeah, I got a couple. I can show you. I'm right next to my pegboard
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Grab
Um,
them.
so the 9-inch trick shad, um, the York glide, and the Nugget are probably these are probably my favorite 3 right now. If we're speaking of all time, it'd be a different answer. It'd be Depths 250, um, Clash 9, and a multitude of 7-inch baits. But just those two were so crazy for me in the beginning of my swim baiting that I have to talk about them. But here's the York Glide, which is this is a prototype York Glide. But
Okay.
this one's awesome. I work with this company. I make these baits, and this thing is a freak of a bait. It has such a good glide. The key with it is that it's super, super multi-dimensional. Wide glide, chop, burn, slow glide. I mean, we were catching them on basically a dead stick the other day with this thing. But this one's awesome just because, like I said, it's very multi-dimensional, and it's not super tall. Last year I filmed some stuff for Halo Rods with my buddies over at Uncle Larry's, and we were getting slow-mo eats on the glide. And I caught a bunch of big fish, but I also missed a bunch of huge fish. And the problem with some of those taller baits is when they come in, they get it, it'll deflect. Like they'll chomp down, and how tall the bait is will deflect the hooks when you set, and it'll just come out. But the key with the York Glide is it's so, you can see, I mean, it's so slim and skinny that a big fish, when they try to inhale that head first, it actually goes in and they get hooked. But
Nice.
there's
so
that one.
And that one was an 8 or a
7.
7? Okay.
Yep, that's a 7-inch.
Nice. Any idea when that one's going to come out?
Yeah, so we've been doing like a couple occasional drops, but this one right here is just a prototype with with weight holes in the bottom and stuff. So, but yeah, they're out now. We're dropping them now. Every Friday pretty much. Small batches, but if y'all watch this, that's definitely a bait you want to get your hands on. I'm telling you, that thing is one of the best 7-inch glides I've fished.
Dude,
here's the 9-inch trick shad.
Nice.
And this one's awesome just because of it's one of those bigger baits that fishes like a 7-inch glide. And anyone that fishes glide baits, once you get into those bigger size ranges, you're usually getting that bigger swooping, harder to chop bait. But with the 9-inch trick shad, it's such a tricky, fast moving with also the wide gliding bait. When I first chucked this thing on Norman, man, it was every other dock, big fish, big fish, big fish. Because this is just such a hard action to replicate. And then lastly, the nugget. Got the paperclip stuck in there. But yeah, the nugget. This is the one that I've been catching all those big trout on. And
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, this one's just such a fish tricker. I mean, literally, it's caught so many different kinds of fish. I mean, literally, I can't even begin to explain all the different species it's caught. But there's a nugget that's been absolutely hammered, and that's all from trout.
That is crazy. Maybe it's a thing. I was completely oblivious to it if it was. I'd never heard of anybody fishing glides for trout. But again, go follow Alex's Instagram. You have got some gigantic browns that you're getting to eat that bait.
Yeah.
And what is that, like is it 4 inches?
Yeah, it's a 4-inch bait. Yep.
Dude, it's dwarfed by the trick shad. But
yeah, I'll show you. I remember you bought a trick shad. What size?
I did. I got the 7.
Okay.
So now I'm gonna have to get a bigger one too.
I'll show you a 7-inch trick shad next to this nugget, just so you can see.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody who's listening, go check out the Kayak Fishing Weekly on YouTube and take a look. That is a massive difference. We're talking. It looks tiny. It looks like BFS. It's a BFS swim bait.
This thing is seriously one of the best fishing lures that I've had the privilege of using, man. I mean, especially on schooling fish or whenever your fish are getting on smaller bait, this is seriously one of the best baits you could possibly have because it is so small, but gives you that same action that like a really good 7-inch glide bait would give you and reacts that way. A lot of the issues with the smaller glide baits is that when you try to, give them action and you hit it too hard, they'll, blow out and they won't swim right. But this nugget, man, you can fish on a, regular medium heavy and work it perfectly fine. And it's super small. But, whenever your fish get on small bait, it's just such a killer and they fall for it. I mean, if you go on my Instagram or, your casting co, you can see, we're casting at bait balls and you can see the fish on scope chasing the bait ball fly off of the bait ball to the nugget. I mean, it's crazy how bad it tricks them.
So that nugget's another bait from York.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to check that out.
Yeah,
And
I know you
it,
have those smallmouth up there in Virginia.
mhm.
This thing for those smallmouth, man, is going to be. I personally can't wait to go back up north and fish for smallmouth with it, because it's going to be one of those things that will definitely trick those huge ones. And the thing that I personally like, I still have to see, but the thing that I personally like is, if you compare it to a Vision 110, it's smaller, and the Vision 110 crushes big smallmouth. And
Mhm.
this, they're going to actually get that in their mouth and get hooked well. So when they come up and thrashing and, 5 feet in the air, I think you're going to have a good chance of actually keeping them hooked with that nugget. So,
Yeah,
I know I'm rambling about it, but it's just such a fun lure to fish with, man.
no, dude, I'm intrigued because I'm not a great swim baiter. I've thrown them a little bit, but what's the one I got? I think is it not the draw, but the flow glide
The flow
maybe.
glider. Yeah.
It's inexpensive. I think it was $20, $25,
Yeah.
and you can do the little modification, shave down the joint to give it some more action, and it works great. I've played with that thing for smallmouth,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of like you were talking earlier. It's a bluegill kind of profile. At
Yeah.
least that's what it looks like to me. And I've had a bunch of smallmouth like that. I had one kind of magical day where I caught 4-pound smallmouth on that thing, and had a couple other good ones. But
Mm-hmm.
then I lost count of how many decent fish, not giants, but say 14 to 15-inch smallmouth were coming up and T-boning that thing, but relatively smallmouth and a deep bait, and it just you'd have the wait for a second. I mean, I could watch them hit it, and it just you know they weren't able to get that thing in their mouth all the way and eat it.
Yeah.
But I could see that little York guy, you know, even those smaller fish could get that a much bigger bite out of that thing and get those hooks and stay pegged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's cool that, it catches huge fish. Like those trout that we were talking about. I mean, those are 20, 25, high 20-inch trout. You know what I'm saying? And I've caught 5, 6 pounders on this nugget, largemouth. And, Caleb's caught 4.5, almost 5 pound spots on it. So it's just because it's small, don't think that it's going to, catch small fish. It catches huge fish.
Yeah, those trout are like there's some places in Virginia that I know have some fish like that,
Mm-hmm.
but to me that is like I don't even know how much big like most of the stocker trout around here. I think they're like 7 or 8 inches, and you might get some bigger ones, but yeah, they'll put those brood fish in every once in a while mixed in, but it's like a
Yeah.
whole different species. I've caught maybe a 20-inch brown, but those ones that you had were, I mean, they weren't just long, they were thick, like
Yeah.
freak looking trout. I didn't even realize North Carolina, like that was a thing down there.
Yeah. I didn't know that either when I lived up north. I did not think that that was a thing, but Tennessee and North Carolina have some unbelievable trout fishing, man. It's crazy. And some of the spots that I fish down here for the trout, I mean, it looked like New Zealand in some of these areas. It's crazy.
You just gotta get up in the mountains.
You got to get up in the
Some
mountains and you got to trek. You got to get you a good set of waders and, be willing to get deep in the water for sure.
nice. Dude, that's cool. I've yeah, I could see myself, messing around with that stuff because the trout, at least for me, like the bass bite gets a little tricky. Like when you got water freezing in the morning or the temperature's down in the 30s.
Hmm.
I think there was a tournament this past weekend on Smith Mountain, and the water temps were, I think they were below 40. It was like it wasn't freezing, but it was like to me that's just not fun to be out in.
Hmm.
But I feel like I got a better chance of getting a trout to eat than I do a bass when the water's that cold.
Yeah, if I ever move back up north, I lived in New York for 18 years. So if I ever move back up there, I'm definitely going to be doing a lot more trout fishing than ice fishing when it gets cold. Just
Nice.
because it is fun, you know what I'm saying? And you can do it when it's cold like that up there.
That I'm curious to try to sneak into some places around here and play with that thing and see if, because it's like you were saying that with bass, you know, in my limited experience with the glide baits, I've seen it where you pull fish that you would not expect to be there. Uh,
Yes.
you kind of get surprised. I've been surprised at how big some of the fish are in some of these places that I've fished, and
Hmm.
they don't respond the same way to some of the traditional, bass lures that I'm, conditioned to throw. But I'm wondering if it's the same kind of if it'll have the same effect on some of the trout uh, around here, like throwing a. I mean, it's not a 9 inch, but it's different from the power bait or the flies or the stuff that I think they see a lot of around here.
Yeah, I mean, I think once the hatches start and those trout are on bugs, like I don't think the glide is that much of a deal. And I don't know yet. I'm not like that much of a trout angler, you know what I'm saying? Like I've been doing it for a long time, but I don't know that much about how they act in those scenarios. I'm usually bass fishing during those times. But
Same.
I definitely think that the glide bait is definitely a play in those colder months, like when the hatches aren't happening and they're eating, more meat. I think that's when it's a play for sure in any high water instance. And that's generally a lot of the fish that I caught recently on the nugget, the big trout, were during those high water scenarios, and those fish were tucked up, under those trees on the bank, and you had to skip the nugget under there and twitch, and they'd come out and get it, and that's a scenario where a fly is really hard to present. You know,
Dude, I like it. You
yeah,
dropping some juice, some trout nuggets.
hmm,
I don't know if people thought they were gonna get that today. I was hoping to, but
yeah,
I'm hoping yeah, dude, that I'm excited. I'm gonna check out York. I'm gonna have to check out Mako. It
yeah,
some fun stuff. Dude, I really appreciate you making some time for me. Um, I'll give you the last word if you want to plug anybody or if there's anything you want to talk about. The floor is yours.
yeah. No, thanks for having me on, dude. Yeah, the whole kayak versus paddleboard thing, it's just a fun way to fish, and I think that if you're someone that doesn't have, a big vehicle, or you an older person maybe you just don't want to carry around a kayak, I think the paddleboard is definitely a great option. I think the Mako is definitely awesome if you're an experienced angler and just want to have something different. But yeah, chuck a big bait if you haven't tried it already. It's super fun. But yeah, thanks for having me on, dude. I think hopefully some people took some cool stuff away from it.
Yeah, man, we're gonna have to do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
Alex Sanville, ladies and gentlemen. Ah, that was fun. That was fun. He's got me amped up. I don't get amped up for species that are not bass very often, but yeah, I'm anxious now to go through that little nugget and try to catch some freak looking trout with that thing. But yeah, good stuff. We got a couple segments to go here. Let's jump into Kings of the Week. All right, this week we have got one king and one queen. We'll start with the queen. Let's see if I can share screen. There we go. Queen of the week is going to be Wendy Biles. A couple weeks ago, she was fishing the Florida Kayak Bass Trail event on Rodman Reservoir and won it with a big total 96. And do I have it right? 96 and a half. Oh, I'm over on Fishing Chaos. Yep, 96 and a half. I was looking at the wrong tab. 96 and a half. She also took the big bass for the tournament, 23 and a quarter inches. Giant fish, big win. Congrats to Wendy. It's kind of a Florida theme today. Everything it seem like we're talking Florida. Our king of the week is also, let's see, we'll close that screen out. Also, well, he's not a Floridian, but I'm recognizing Mr. Eric Jackson. And let's see if I can get the fish pulled up here. Every time it takes me forever and a day. I apologize, but let's get this fish up. There we go. So I hinted at it earlier. Uh, the biggest fish of the Ocalapalooza event with Kayak Adventure Series was bigger than 24 inches. And let's see if I can actually scroll. Yep, 25. Shoot, I thought I could see it. I believe it's 25 and a half. Caught by Eric Jackson, massive fish. As I understand it, his personal best in terms of length. I'm curious what the fish weighs. It looks thick. I want to know if it's a double digit. I suspect it is. I'm not sure if he weighed or not, and I couldn't find it on social media anywhere. But a massive, massive fish. And big congrats to Eric and to Wendy. They are our king and queen of the week. And I've got props for our yakking on a budget. It's not, I don't know, it's not so much of a budget tip this week. I feel like it's a good tip. And it's something that I'll credit this one to Jeff Little. He's the first person that I saw talk about cleaning glasses, at least in this way. So, of course, I like Hobie, hence the hat. These are the new Hobie Hull floats. In case you haven't seen them, I like them a lot. But one of the problems, doesn't matter what sunglasses you wear, they kind of get gunky around the rim, around the nose. And it drives me nuts from sweat, oils on your skin. I absolutely hate it when you get that smudge and it starts to make, not my vision blurry, but it affects, how, my ability to see and see below the surface. It's like a pet peeve. I absolutely hate it. I'll share a trick for, I guess what I do on the water for cleaning it, but something that I didn't really think of, and again, Jeff Little's the first person I saw share it. But you use this stuff when you get home. This is just Dawn. You don't have to use Dawn. Any sort of liquid detergent, little drop, some running water, and it gets all that grime, all that gunk out of it, cleans them off. I'm usually lazy and not thinking about cleaning my gases when I get off the water, but it's something that I'm going to try to do a better job of this year. Um, the little, the other ways that you have of cleaning, like when you're on the water, they're not as thorough, they're not as good as this soap method. And then, I mean, these little microfiber towels you can use to dry it off. Um, it just leaves it squeaky clean, none of that gunk. Um, and yeah, you're good to go until next time on the water. Honestly, some of these little bags, these little pouches, like this Hobie one here, that the glasses come in, they work great too. You can dry them off with that. Not, basically my fear there is scratching lenses. I want to use something like microfiber that's real soft, that's not going to put a scratch on those lenses. But yeah, dish detergent, dish detergent, liquid dish soap. That is the tip for this week. When you get off the water, clean off those glasses and get them ready for the next trip. And yeah, next week I'll talk about, again, spoiler. I'll talk about my on the water solution. I'm curious if anybody out there has a better one. Um, I'm always anxious to learn. I think I got a decent one, but I'll show you my on the water solution. And I'm anal about carrying the stuff with me on the water, but I can't carry the dish soap. So dish soap is when I get home, and then when I'm on the water, we'll talk about that next week. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks to Alex, great guest. Drop some juice. I'm excited for next week. We'll be back talking more kayak fishing conversation. And until then, remember to take a kid fishing.